Hello, everyone, and welcome to Dice Jailers.
Hey.
I am Dollar Store Lenny Kravitz.
Call me Snake.
God damn it. And thank you for joining us this week.
Happy early Halloween.
Happy early Halloween. We wanted to be in these off-brand costumes and whatnot, and I love it so much.
Off brand. I'm on brand here.
That's true. You're on brand. I'm here. So this week, we're gonna talk about some of the scarier monsters that you
Yeah.
can find in D&D Fifth Edition. We both
'Cause-
picked one out of a couple different challenge rating categories, so we'll go from there as we get to. But first and foremost, how you doing, bud?
I am doing fantastic. Workload at work has been decreased, which has much less stress level. Um, I have this awesome custom made tank top for a Snake Plissken costume, which I friggin' love because Escape from New York is one of my favorite movies. And yeah, I mean, it's almost Halloween. Not like I'm going anywhere for Halloween, but still,
Right.
I appreciate the Halloween season. I'm still gonna watch scary movies and get dressed up. That is what I'm going to do because I can.
Abso-friggin-lutely, man.
How about you? Like you didn't you have your directorial Zoom apocalypse?
Yep, we had the show on Monday, and
Mhm.
it's actually still up online on YouTube, so people
Excellent.
can still watch the show that I directed and watch my phenomenal actors do these scenes. But it was a super fun night. Like there was a good amount of people that watched it live. The
Nice.
live chat was just pretty populated. It was nice. It was fun to see my actors do stuff because as you know as a director, actors always do stuff that's just a little different than
They
what
really
they did
do.
when it comes to the performance.
They really do, and
And
they make it special by doing that.
and they full on did. Like I did not ask them for costume or props because it was a very short turnaround time and it's a Zoom show. Uh and they decided to get costumes and props and
Just do it anyway for you.
exactly which was it was so good. So that's got me on a bit of a high. But other than that, I've been like that's where all my energy's been.
Nice.
After that, it's just been keeping everything clean, applying for any bartending job I can find because
Sure.
I'm getting down to the point where I need to start doing things again to afford to live. Because I figured we'd just be
The
doing
struggle is
theater
real.
again. I had hoped we would just be doing theater again by now.
But here we are.
Yep.
Here we are.
Uh, but yeah, that's where I'm at.
Oh,
So
nice. It's a good place to be.
I mean, it's a good place to be amid the terror and awfulness that is existence.
And speaking of terror,
There we go.
there's the segue right there. So smooth.
Smooth as frickin' sandpaper, bud.
Yeah. So when we went into this, as far as like scariest monsters, I want to start at the weaker end of things.
Absolutely.
And the first monster I picked up, the combat rating is only 1/2.
Really?
I consider it one of the scariest monsters in the game because used well, you could even have level 20 adventurers potentially hosed by these things, depending on their class. And so my
right.
first one is the combat rating 1/2. You'll find this in Volo's Guide to Monsters, the Swarm of Rot Grubs.
Oh.
Love rot grubs. Their movement is only 5 feet. They have a climb speed of 5 feet, and they can only attack something in the square they occupy.
Right.
Their to hit is a +0, but if they hit you, you get 1d4 rot grubs on you. And if they aren't scraped off or burned off right away, they burrow into your skin and they do damage from the inside. If they're inside you, when you hit 0 hit points, you die.
Yep.
It doesn't matter your level, you die. And those are the kind of enemies to me, when I'm a player, that really kind of scare me or get me on edge. Anything that has a chance of my character dying. And that's why I go with the rot grubs. You can use them in interesting ways. Like if you have, say, a long corridor or like a vertical tunnel,
Mm-hmm.
that the PCs had to crawl through or climb up. And when you put a bunch of these swarms of rot grubs in there, they're going to get opportunities to try and burrow into these characters.
Right.
And yes, something as simple as a spell that cures disease will rid their bodies of them,
But
but
you still
it's
gotta
still
have
that,
that cure
yeah.
disease.
And it's the sense of that ticking clock. So for my first scary monster, I'm going with a swarm of rot grubs.
I get that. That's terrifying. And now I'm just like in my mind I'm seeing like the PC like you're talking about like climbing up a hole,
Yeah.
like just climbing up through these grubs and one gross. Uh and two just that long slow climb cuz especially at earlier levels a lot of players don't exactly have the athletics for that.
Well, and if you also have them in a scenario where they have to get out of a tomb or some sort of dungeon in a certain amount of time, like it's
Yeah.
filling with acid or it's caving in on itself. So now
Or
maybe they
just a
don't have,
pit filling with rot grubs.
yeah. And so they have to
Ugh.
climb through these things and they don't have time to stop and deal with them while they're climbing out. And so now it's a race against what's under their skin, killing them from the inside.
Mm-hmm.
Like they have to get out in time to maybe then heal and just really hope that none of the players drop because if they fall unconscious, they're dead.
Yeah. Dang, that's rough.
So
See,
what
yeah,
do you got?
my
Another,
monster for the earlier levels is having construction next door while you're trying to do a show.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. That's
yeah,
1d4 points of sound damage.
yep, and psychic damage. Don't forget.
Little both, little both.
And you never get a long rest.
No.
No, but the monster that I picked, it's a relatively common one that people that DMs like to throw around a lot, just because it's creepy and it's kind of a setup for other creatures.
Uh-huh.
But it's challenge rating 4, so at
Okay.
the higher area of this like this 0 to 5 challenge ratings. But we have the lobster aboleth illithid the Chul. And
Oh.
I love the Chul, because part of it is it's scarier for players that have played for a while and
Right.
know some of the interconnectedness of other creatures, because a lot of times if your DM is doing a lot of setup to a bigger creature,
Mhm.
sometimes these Chul they'll be the first things that show up right at the beginning before you eventually end up fighting a mind flayer or an elder aboleth.
Okay, so like the idea of being the preamble to the terror.
I mean, and besides that, they're just big beasts for CR4. Like they've got upwards of 90 hit points. Their
Okay.
armor class is 16, which is still kind of hard to hit for a lot of earlier characters. And the most terrifying of all, as a DM, being able to use this creature, is if your players are told that that Chuls are around as like sentries for something else. Your
Right.
players try and sneak by, but no. Oh, these Chuls, they sense your magic.
They
So you
find you.
can't if you try to sneak with with like a spell of invisibility, they're gonna detect that magic. If you try to if you try and use any kind of magic to help your stealth, they're going to detect it and it's gonna break your stealth.
And see, that's awesome because if you have players, who don't know that, or even if you take that ability that Chul has, I mean, give it to a different monster.
Mm-hmm.
So, like that's always one of my favorite tricks is just homebrew monsters a little bit, change their vulnerabilities, give them some different abilities
Right.
that the players wouldn't be used to. But something like that, or especially at lower levels, if you have a ranger in the party that got pass without trace, or maybe your druid has it,
Mm-hmm.
some of those just bread and butter lower level spells that they would think, oh cool, we're gonna sneak past all this stuff, and then having that basically be
Yep.
this beacon that lights them up to these monsters. Like
Exactly.
that's some cool psychological terror.
I mean, and add on to it that like this creature's got multi attack, and one of its multi attacks are its tentacles. Because if you go and look up this creature, it's basically like it's a more lobstery version of the alien xenomorph,
Yeah.
with some face tentacles a la Zoidberg. Uh, and so you combine all those things together, and one, as a DM, you can just paint a terrifying picture. And two, these things are amphibious.
Oh, if you can grapple a player in the water.
Mm-hmm. Into the water, into a swamp.
Yep. Yep.
Oh, yeah. That's
See,
why these...
that's where it gets fun.
And also, at low level, we gotta remember, these dudes are large-sized creatures. So they're big boys.
Take up a lot of real estate. And so again, talking about like the enclosed spaces, kind of like with the rock grubs,
Mm-hmm.
when you have something beefy like that, if it's taking up a lot of real estate, it means it can get to any one of those PCs it wants to at any time.
Mm-hmm.
And it sees all that magic. So if it's able to get back there and it's able to grab a hold of your wizard,
Mm-hmm. And just tentacle, poison tentacle.
Yep.
That wizard's going down because that's a Constitution save, baby.
Well, I mean, hopefully the wizard was smart enough to put some points in its Constitution score.
Absolutely not. It's a wizard. You're a wizard. What is Constitution?
I mean, you and I have very different play styles, my friend.
That's
Very
because-
different play styles.
That's because you play barbarians.
Well, no, it doesn't matter what I play. I value my hit points.
Because you play barbarians.
Well, yeah, I also don't want to die. So,
when we bump up into the challenge rating, what's your next one? So this is
this one.
By the way,
Yeah.
audience, we split everything up in the challenge ratings of 0 to 5, then 6 to 10, 11 to 15, 16 to 20. We're doing
Yeah.
one out of each.
And we're deliberately trying to avoid monsters that have legendary resistances or legendary actions, simply because they really change the entire dynamic of how a combat plays out. And those are also much more likely to be your boss type monsters. So for this one, I went with a challenge rating 6. So again, bottom of the scale of this range. But this one, I think, is one of the scariest creatures in the entire game. I love this creature as a DM.
All right.
And I love it for multiple reasons. One, the things it can be a precursor to, like the associations with it in lore. If your players don't know what it is, they're going to find out quick, and it will heighten terror. And then if they see one of these again, they're really going to be afraid of it.
Because they know what it can do.
You know I love this creature. It's the Bodak.
Oh, son of a...
I love the Bodak.
The amount of
so much.
times you have sent Bodaks at us.
Yeah, and Jordan is one of my players. He can attest. 2 different areas, but 3 different encounters total where they've run into Bodaks. And the first time, it was this thing by itself, and they didn't know what it was. And the Bodak has 2 things about it that I love. One, the death gaze.
It's the worst. It's the worst.
The Constitution save, it's only a 13, so it's fairly low. But every now and then, somebody just rolls like trash.
Yep.
And if you fail to save by 5 or more, you drop to 0 hit points and fall unconscious. And that's the big thing. You don't just fall unconscious. You are at 0 hit points.
Yep.
And then it has its aura of annihilation. And this is my favorite part about the Bodak.
It's the fucking worst.
If a character is within the aura, at the beginning of that character's turn, they take some psychic damage. It's not a lot of damage, but here's the thing. If you fell unconscious from that gaze, you are losing a death save at the top of your turn. Meaning that without being saved and without rolling a 20, you cannot roll 3 saves before the Bodak kills you.
Nope.
And this is what I love about this creature is its AC is only 15. It's not terribly high. It's got 58 hit points, not a lot. If you throw one of these at a group of adventurers where a combat rating 6 is going to be a challenge, it can be straight up terrifying. But again, that saving throw, all it takes is for even a monk with perfect body that's got proficiency in all saves. It's entirely possible that they fail that roll by enough. They roll that natural one and they drop straight to 0, and the whole dynamic of the battle has changed.
Oh, absolutely.
And sure, okay, you can avert your gaze and you're like, well, I'm not going to look at it. Well, now you're making all your attacks against it at disadvantage. And all you have to do for it to use its gaze on you is be able to see it at the start of your turn. That's not even an action. So that's why I love the Bodak, is it has multiple abilities that are just happening. They're perpetual.
They're mean.
Yeah, and
They're mean.
It's this wonderful, horrifying undead creature, also found in Volo's Guide to Monsters, and it's a creature I really recommend to any DM to look at and consider, especially if they're playing a campaign with any amount of undead, because it's terrifying undead, or if you have anything dealing with Orcus at all, because they're specifically tied in to the lore of Orcus, who is my favorite of the demon lords, just because he's gross and nasty and violent, and I friggin' love Orcus, and I love all the lore that goes along with him. But again, Bodaks can just change a combat, because one rolls out, and all of a sudden your players, they might start investing very powerful spells to take these things out, or making sure they stay at a certain distance. So you can really use that Aura of Annihilation to manipulate the battlefield as they just stay away from it out of fear. Like if you tell your players, they've run into these before, and you go, you see a Bodak, or you see X number Bodaks,
Just
they're
son of a
going,
bitch.
the fear is going to start, and that's why I like that monster so much, is what it can potentially do.
Right.
Knowing, like, if you have a party that knows we biff a con save and somebody's down, and now we have to invest everything into getting them back on their feet. And let's face it, what do most people use to get people back on their feet? Healing word. 1d4 plus your mod. Okay, Bodak can knock you right down from that.
Yeah.
So it's a difficult evac. And so that's mine for that 6 to 10. I will take Bodak
baby.
every day of the week, twice on Sundays.
My
I
question,
love Bodaks.
my important question for you is,
Yeah.
are your Bodaks yellow?
Are my Bodaks yellow?
Music
I'm
joke?
not. I'm not catching the reference
Nothing?
here.
All right, moving on.
Oh! You know what I just realized? I got to jump back to your first entry here, real quick.
Yeah?
Real quick. And besides doing the time warp, I personally find that thing terrifying. You know why? Because I'm all about magic.
God damn it. Every time I think I'm gonna get through any kind of video call with this man without him doing that, ever since the episode he first did that on, and now it just happens every time. Even when we're just talking, like playing D&D and like talking after the session, it'll happen.
It will. But anyways, now that my nonsense is taken care of, what do you have in this range?
So my creature for the 6 to 10 range, you've been going at the low end, I've been going at the high end.
Yeah.
This bad baby is a challenge rating 10. It's out of Mordenkainen, which great book.
It is.
If you're looking around for like one particular 5th edition book to grab up, Mordenkainen should definitely be high on that list. But this is the Elder Oblex.
Oh, I almost chose this one.
Because it's such a bad beast. Like,
Yes.
let's not forget that, like, its mental saving throws are through the roof.
Yep.
Generally, its stats are just through the roof. It's got spell casting.
Yep.
But if you've ever had the fun as a DM of absorbing somebody in a gelatinous cube, which I did almost pick.
Oh, again, you and I are very in tune. That was on my list of monsters to
Hashtag
consider.
that G cube. Uh, but this creature, it's an ooze. The Ooblex is an ooze. And the
Yep.
greatest thing is that there are minor Ooblexes and young Ooblexes that you can use to lead up to fighting an Elder Ooblex. And the biggest thing with them, not only with their, like, they can sling spells, they've got a bunch of, like, immunities. Like, they're immune to blind, charm, deaf, exhaustion. They can't be knocked prone, which those are all big things, especially for like your martial classes. Any kind of
Yes.
crowd control abilities that martial classes have, it's usually knocking them prone. And can't knock an ooze off its feet. What are feet?
Yeah, it's got no feet.
And it's got all these spells that it can cast. It can squeeze through small openings, so it can just pop out of a crack in a wall on your characters. So it can slurp in at any time.
And when
Uh,
not just that, it has that method of evac. Like if it's losing a
mhm.
fight,
It can
it can
just.
just slip through a small pipe or something, and all of a
Mhm.
sudden your players are left there, licking their wounds, but knowing that this thing's still out there somewhere.
Mhm. And it can come back, and it's got blind sight, so it can just be in that tiny hole in the dark and just be blind sight sensing you
Well,
and
and that
still
one's
know
got
where
the
you
ability
are.
to create those simulacrums, doesn't it?
Uh, that's. Let me look.
It's like I want to say that one can create either simulacrums or clones.
It's the. Yeah, it is. It is simulacrums that it can do that.
Yeah.
But it's not simulacrums of itself. It's small imitations of something that it's seen,
So
or something that it's something from anyone's memories that it's stolen,
yeah.
because I haven't even gotten to the fucking worst ability of it,
Yes. Go on.
is that it's got the eat memories ability that makes you think of a mind flayer, because if it can envelop someone and kill it, and it can envelop someone and eat their memories even without killing the character,
Yeah.
which is the worst. So like, and I mean, you can fix your memories being drained with a greater restoration spell. Uh, but think about it: this Ooblex can slurp in to a fight out of almost nowhere, grab onto one of your allies, eat its memory, and then slurp out, and then send a simulacrum from whoever's memory it's ate memories. So
Hmm.
you could have a player character, like if you have an Elder Ooblex, because they're not unintelligent, they're just oozes.
Yeah.
So it's very possible for an Ooblex a to be like your big mastermind, big bad, because they've ate someone's memories and they're using these simulacrums to impersonate. And so you have, like, at the beginning of some kind of like haunted house or like an augmented death house, you have an Elder Ooblex jump out, eat someone's memories, and then all the way through this haunted house, that character whose memories were eaten, they're seeing visions of their past that also then jump and attack at them as oozes.
Yeah. It's one that you can really play with a lot of the psychological aspects of horror, and
Mm-hmm.
it reminds me a little bit of like the T-1000 from Terminator 2.
Okay.
The idea that if it eliminates a person, it can now send this replication of it. Now I know it has the ooze thread that comes off of
Yeah.
the simulacrum, so it might try and find ways to hide that. But you
Yeah.
could have it where you could have a town that's partially overrun
By
by
just
this Elder
the
Oblex.
ooze.
Yeah. And then finding out that some of these people aren't actually people, and then just having your players wonder who can they trust, who can they not trust. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot you can do with a monster like that.
Oh yeah. It's just, and also it just in general is kind of freaking gross.
It
It's
is.
it's big red scary goop with like the faces of the memories it's stolen kind of floating around inside it. Yeah,
Yeah, it's fun. It's
gross.
fun, and it again, like you said, it's one to gross out your players, and it's one to also terrify them.
Absolutely. So, what's your next one?
So, you know how you had been going on the high end, and I've been staying low here.
You jump to the high end?
I did. This one's a combat rating 14,
Okay.
and this one you had mentioned Mordenkainen's. This one comes out of Mordenkainen's,
Yep.
and much like I said, how the Obelix reminds me a little bit of the T1000, just with that replication thing. This one reminds me in ways a lot of the Terminator, and that is the Retriever.
Oh. Oh,
The,
hot damn. Okay.
the Retriever is a large construct, 210 hit points, 19 armor class, movement speed 40, climb speed 40. Often sent, it's associated a lot with the drow, particularly drow that are located in the plains of the abyss. And it looks like a metallic spider, and it's sent after a quarry. If the Retriever is on the same plane of its existence as its quarry, it knows where its quarry is and can go hunt it down. And this is why I love this enemy. It doesn't matter where you hide, it will find you. It doesn't matter where you go, it will find you. And you look at its abilities, its only spell is plane shift, which is because once it's caught you, it's going to take you and plane shift you back to where it came from.
Yup.
It can make multiple attacks. Its force beam does a good chunk of damage, and then it has this paralyzing beam. 18 DC con save or be stunned. And this is where I think a monster like this becomes the most scary or the most fun.
Right.
Not so much to target your players, because players can get fairly godlike in their power. But if you have it where they have an NPC that you make it like there's an escort mission of sorts, because in any video game ever, everyone hates escort missions.
It's because they always move too slowly.
Or too fast.
Well, yeah.
One or the other. But imagine having this escort mission and there's this Retriever that's going to be coming after you. To make it interesting, so I said it's combat rating 14. So if you go, say, when your players are around level 5, they've just gotten their level 3 spells. If they're martial, they've just gotten their multi-attack. But there's no way they could stand up to a creature like this.
Absolutely not.
So now they have to constantly stay ahead of it. Or if they see it, they have to somehow incapacitate it or slow it down or something as they're trying to protect this individual. Like straight up Terminator, you have it where they've got to protect Sarah Connor or they've got to protect John Connor. Whichever Connor you want it to be, you put that in there. And this is why I really love that one, is you can get that sci-fi horror into it, where you have just this perpetual thing chasing them. And you can also use this Retriever where, even at higher levels, if your players have maybe made a deal that they welched on, or they pissed off someone who's of the abyss, and you want to send one of these Retrievers, this can be a really interesting tool if you have a player who's going to have to miss a few sessions, or you have this Retriever come out, grab them, plane shift away, and now the rest of them have to figure out where that character ended up and go find them until that player can come back. And I enjoy that, where there's an organic way to go, oh, okay, real life means you have to miss a few sessions. What can we do to help facilitate that? Well, the Retriever is a great way. And they're also no joke. Like I said, over 200 hit points, 19 armor class. They can take a hit, and they deal some pretty good damage.
Oh, yeah. They're beefy as all get out.
Yeah.
Even if you didn't have any... even if you just had a Retriever that somehow wasn't on a mission against you, that you ran up against, you'd still have a tough time just taking it down as a creature.
Well, then, and if you want to talk about immunities, immune to necrotic, poison, psychic, all three of those,
Ugh.
immune. As far as condition immunities, charmed, exhaustion, frightened, paralyzed, poisoned, has blind sight, has dark vision. It's it's nasty. And on that paralyzing beam, if
Oh
it
yeah.
paralyzes you as part of its movement, it can pick up a paralyzed creature.
Yep.
So if it hits its target, if it hits its quarry with that paralyzing beam, it can then move
Yoink.
along, scoop it up, and the next turn, it's plane shifting away.
Yep.
It's
It's
gone.
made to just yoink scoop out.
Yeah, and used well, it's got enough hit points and enough speed. There's a good chance it's going to catch up with whatever its quarry is. And that's what I like about it so much is I don't imagine running one in the sense of, oh, how much damage can I do to these players, being able to kill any of them. No, forget that. Look at your hit points as this is how much time I have to get that quarry.
Right. Because
So
I mean, with its quarry or not, it's still going to keep itself alive to eventually catch its quarry again.
yes,
So it can plane shift away to plane shift back.
exactly. And if you want to have some real fun, if your players, maybe send one after them when you know they're strong enough to not crush it super easily, but they're definitely the odds are in their favor in the fight, right? They
Right.
do well, they take care of it, they feel good. And then a
It
couple
comes
days later,
back.
two, you have two sent after them.
No. That's
Because then,
terrifying.
yeah, right? Because then if they take out both of those, what's in the back of their mind is how many are they going to send next time?
Right.
Yeah. So that's the other reason I like that one so much. I feel like there's a lot you can do.
That's good. That's
yeah.
really good.
I'm a big fan of those monsters where it's not just a block of stats. Like, what else can they do?
Right. And how can they fit into the story?
Yes, yes. And because a retriever is a construct, I feel like, you know what? If you're like, well, I'm not, doing the whole drow or evil followers of law thing, I'm like, that's cool. Neither am I. But it doesn't have to be arachnid in build. You can make it almost any other creature you want. Maybe you've got this, a dark wizard who has, put themselves out in the jungle. So you have the retriever. Now it's like lizard shape.
Because I'm dumb,
Yeah.
my brain immediately went to a corgi with claws.
I'm for
Just
it.
a giant mechanical corgi, but also with these two extra claws to just like do the scoop. But
I
otherwise,
love it.
it's just a fucking corgi.
Yeah. When was the last time you were scared of a corgi? Now you are.
It's so funny.
I'm for it. I want to see the or well, I mean, you know what? Really, I'd like to see is if you had like if like imagine some of the like ancient dragons that might have some of these that they could send out, and even imagine if you had these sent for like the good dragons as well. So if they want an audience with a certain person, you're not giving it to them. So you could have like these things that are the same color scheme as their dragon counterparts. So you could have a gold dragon with a golden retriever.
So we're ending this show early.
That was a long walk to get there. That was a
That
long walk.
was a long journey.
Yeah.
At
Really,
least-
really wasn't worth the destination, but I don't care.
I mean, it's all right. It would be very strange though if you're sending them from dragons if you have a black dragon because it's gonna have to create it in a laboratory.
That's true. I see where you're going.
Yep.
I'm for it.
Yep. Not gonna
Black
say it,
laboratory retriever. No, I'm fine with it. Laboratory retriever. So, dumb
Yeah.
jokes aside, what do you have for this next tier of
So-
fear?
Yeah, so I've got this big beastie, and you know how much I love mythology. And like
Yes.
especially going like because I played way too much Age of Mythology, and I went to a very very white school, so all the mythology we got was Greek and Roman. Uh, I really like I was a big fan of the Mythic Odysseys of Theros finally being a book,
Yeah.
and this creature
So
comes
good.
from that book. It's the Typhon. Mm-hmm.
Oh.
The Typhon. It's basically a bigger, badder Hydra.
Yep.
Like it's in essence, it's a bigger, badder Hydra. And so you've got this big hulking beast with hit points out the ass. It doesn't have as high of armor class as the Retriever, but it doesn't really need it because it doesn't need to dodge because this beast has regeneration.
And that is always terrifying.
And that's just seeing, because not only does it have like proper regeneration of just hit points in combat, but the Typhon only dies if it does not regenerate on its next turn. So the players can knock it down to 0 hit points, but if they don't properly end it by hitting it extra so its regenerate is less than, or it's in negative hit points further than its regenerate is, it'll come back.
And if it gets to have another turn after it's come back, then those hit points are just building.
Exactly. And like if in with creatures with regenerate, you have one bad round of attacks and it's basically undone your last round of damage at it. Like yeah, at level
Well,
15, you're probably doing more damage around to it than, 20 hit points. But
sure.
like if you all miss or take a turn to buff or heal, like that's 20 hit points it's got back.
Or if it takes, if it uses its actions not to attack, maybe it uses the disengage action. Maybe it
Mm-hmm.
uses the dodge action. Maybe it gets
Exactly.
defensive for a round or two to start buffing up a bit. Like it could really hose you. I mean, how many of us have been in that low level adventuring group that just had to work forever to take down a friggin' troll because no one had fire damage?
Right. And so
Or
and
the wizard's
this
firebolt just kept missing.
yeah, and the Typhon doesn't have that stop of regeneration like trolls do.
Mhm.
Where like if you hit it with a certain type of damage, it still has its regenerate regardless of what you hit it with.
Yeah, yeah,
And
and that's
then
what makes it fun.
add to it that it's immune to acid damage and necrotic damage, so you can
Yeah.
put it like it's a big beastie that merits having its own like territory and lair. So you add that to it being a place that's brimming with undead energy or just pools of acid. It can just walk through those without anything. You guys can't.
Exactly. And which is a great time if you can, if it grapples something and then
Mm-hmm.
just drag it right into the acid.
Well, and its multi attack is 3 hits at level
Yeah.
15, so you've got its bite, which in the book it's a plus 12 to hit. It's 35 damage on the average. Its constrict is also a grapple. That's a 12 to hit and at a 17 average damage. And then you've got the bite that's another plus 12 to hit and a 26 average damage with also a 19 average acid damage. Like in one round, if it hits the same person with everything, that's a huge chunk of damage even for like a raging barbarian. That's still
Oh
a
yeah,
lot.
because even if you're playing a totem barbarian where you resist everything but psychic, that damage adds up. Like it adds
Mm-hmm.
up over time. Like even as someone who loves to play barbarians and has gone round after round of taking that bludgeoning damage where I'm having it every time, you keep getting hit and it does add up.
Mm-hmm.
Like sure you're tanking, but if
Like
your barbarian is fighting something that also regenerates, your barbarian doesn't regenerate.
probably
You have to
not.
pump spells into that barbarian to give them more hit points.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a
And so
nasty creature.
that's the scary for me with this creature is that it's like cuz it's also a big mouth and then its tentacles are basically other small hydra heads.
Yeah.
And so it's this big, just big maw of a reptilian beast that can come out at you from its lair and chomp, grab, chomp, and it just doesn't die.
Well, that's the thing. Like, and if you just say, imagine it takes 4 rounds of combat to kill something like that. If you're just doing the simple math, now you're adding 80 hit points onto it because it gets to regenerate those 4 times.
Yep.
And that's really the thing with that regeneration is it prolongs combat.
Mm-hmm.
And any round where your players were not focused on doing damage, they could be in real trouble.
And also, like, yeah, at level 15, your monks and your barbarians are going to have some bonus move speed. But it's got a 40-foot move speed.
Yeah.
So, and 40-foot move speed and an extra 10-foot reach. So
and everyone forgets the extra reach.
Yeah, you're not running away from this thing.
No, it's going to catch you.
Like, if you're low level and you encounter it on accident because your DM's trying to keep you out of an area, you're probably gonna die.
Probably.
And, like, even if you don't, like,
you might wish you had.
Right? Because also, like, that big beastie, it's gonna remember you.
Yes. And if you run into it again, your DM has probably beefed up its stats a little bit just to, make round 2 be something special.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Like, your DM will do something completely monstrous, like giving it spell reflection, which that would easily bump this guy up to, like, a CR 17.
At
just adding spell reflection onto it.
Spell reflection is nasty, but it's a wonderful thing to give creatures that your players won't be ready for.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Like, people that, like, have only played low-level games, you've never experienced spell reflection, probably.
And once it happens once, you become real wary about it at all times.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yup. Like, that's... Liam O'Brien and that disintegrate.
Right? The tension.
My favorite thing is watching their talks episode for that, and Liam admitted that he forgot about the spell reflection.
It's an easy thing to forget with everything going on in a battle. Well,
so we're getting
my last entry here.
Give us your biggest bad boy.
All right. This one does not have spell reflection, but it's got some pretty nasty stuff regardless. It is a combat rating 20 creature, and it does not have legendary actions. This only has an armor class of 14.
Okay.
It has 297 hit points. It is immune to necrotic and poison damage. It resists acid, cold, fire, lightning, thunder, and the standard non-magical damage. Has almost 300 hit points, a ground speed of 40, a fly speed of 40. This is the Nightwalker.
Yeah, it is.
And the Nightwalker, I think, is a contender for the single scariest monster in the game. If anyone has never really looked at the stat block of the Nightwalker or never considered how it can be used, it has that aura of annihilation, very similar to a Bodak. It just does significantly more damage. But if you are in the Nightwalker's aura, once you take that damage, the other thing it does, and it's a DC 21 Constitution save. Yeah. If you fail, you only take about 14 necrotic damage, but the Nightwalker now has advantage on all attacks against you.
Damn.
Also, with its multi-attack, it either is going to have a 15-foot reach to hit you with necrotic damage, and then you have to make that same Constitution save, or your max hit points are reduced by the damage dealt. It also has its Finger of Doom, which if it hits you with that, you become frightened.
Doom.
Precisely. But now we get to my favorite part about the Nightwalker. So we know it just hits you in its aura. It gets advantage. We know that if it hits you with its other attack, that if you fail to save, your max hit points are reduced. If you are reduced to 0 hit points from damage dealt by the Nightwalker, doesn't have to be from an attack. It can be by its aura, you die. And you
Yep.
cannot be revived by any means other than the wish spell.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why I love the Nightwalker, is
Yup.
whittling down characters, because everyone's familiar with, there's a certain feature in 5e, it is hotly debated, and it's healing word. There are a lot of people who hate it because they say, you know what, this character takes all this damage, and then healing word, they're back up. And a lot of players use the healing word yo-yo. Oh, whatever, our barbarian got dropped again, healing word, they got 5 hit points, we're fine. But you can't do that with a Nightwalker, because you hit 0, you're dead, which means once you get below about half hit points, you're probably thinking, I need to heal. Because
Mm-hmm.
in that latter half, hey, you're in its aura. You failed to save. It's now rolling an advantage. If it double crits on you, thinking about what that could do to your max hit point total, how low it could get.
Mm-hmm.
Now you can only heal so high. And that's why it is my choice of that upper tier for the scariest monster. It's because, and imagine if you entered that battle not at full health.
And a big thing for you as a usually barbarian player, that losing max hit points is scary for a barbarian.
It's terrifying.
It's the way to take out a barbarian, like straight up.
Because it's as much as their other attacks are based around strength. I argue con is just as important for them, because their job is to take damage. That's why raging does half damage to so much.
Mm-hmm.
You're meant to take it. Well, now you can't afford to take that damage, because granted, you have a good con save as a barbarian, but it's still a 21.
Yeah, there's still a good chance that you're not going to pass it.
Yeah, even at level 17, where you've got a +6 proficiency and you probably have a 20 con, so you have a +11, you still have to roll a 10 or better.
Yeah, that's still, halfway up the die,
Yeah, that's a nasty, nasty monster. So that's my pick. Is the Nightwalker.
That's also real bad. How long does the max hit points? How long are those max hit points down for? Long rest?
Yeah, long rest or greater restoration.
Because I'm just thinking, because you've got your other smaller creatures that have necromantic damage that do that stuff.
Yep.
Sending your players through a number of those, like the zombies, the different zombies, the different shades, the different undead creatures that have that, permanent hit point reduction before fighting this beast.
Terrifying.
That'd
Terrifying.
be big and bad. So my last one.
Yeah.
I broke our rules slightly.
That's okay.
Because this beast does have legendary actions. It does technically have a lair. It can have lair actions. It's from Princes of the Apocalypse, which I think is just generally underused by people. Because it was one of the first things that came out for 5th edition. So people are like, yeah, but the past is the past. Which I fully think people should not have that stance.
Give it another look.
The Ogremok. This big, because one, he starts as just a gargantuan earth elemental.
Yep.
So you are fighting a mountain.
Yes, you are.
You are fighting a mountain. This is, if you watch Critical Role, this is the Titan. This is the Titan that Vecna rolled into battle. This creature, is 526 hit points.
It can take a hit.
It's a mountain. You're fighting a mountain, and its slam attacks are boosted, and this is where it sets off this particular baddie from just a gargantuan elemental to this big beast. And yes, he's got a name, and yes, he's got legendary actions, so it kind of beats the purpose of this being the scariest, just regular monsters. But just the amount of terror that you can inspire in people by describing a mountain standing up and then punching someone in the face. you got punched by a mountain, and it's resistant to basically everything that's not damage, or that's not magic damage,
Yeah,
and it's immune to basically every condition.
because it's a mountain.
Yeah, like, you can't trip a mountain. You really can't.
No, you can try.
And you're not gonna charm a mountain or
Nope.
petrify a mountain. It's already petrified,
Yeah,
baby.
exactly. Like it's just redundancy right there.
And, like, not even counting its legendary actions, because its legendary actions, they're extra for the purposes of this talk.
Sure.
But it's got spellcasting. And it's very simple spellcasting, but it's got meld into stone and wall of stone. But most importantly, it's got meld into stone, which means this mountain can disappear into the ground and then appear right back up under you.
Which is an amazing feature on something
It's
like that.
a gargantuan-sized enemy. Gargantuan, the topmost layer of size for D&D.
And it can just burrow right the hell up underneath you.
I mean, it's already got a burrow speed.
Yep.
So if it doesn't want to cast, it can just dig. But also, it can just slurp into the ground and then whoop up underneath you. And it's got the ability, without its legendary actions, to summon other smaller elementals. It does have the drawback that he literally throws these elementals off of himself, so it does damage him a bit, but he's got hit points to spare.
Yeah. Only 500 some odd hit points.
Yeah, and he can also throw them off of himself up to 100 feet away.
Like, imagine all of a sudden, you see this mountain, it yanks off a piece of itself, and it decides to become high and tight on you and try and hit you with a little chin music because maybe it thinks you're standing up too close to the plate.
Mm-hmm. And then, boom, another elemental.
Yeah. So,
the elementals that it throws out, they're regular earth elementals. So they've still got roughly 90-something hit points, if I remember correctly.
yeah, they're still going to give you a bad time.
Mm-hmm. And so, it's really, it's a siege engine. It's a living siege engine, and it does deal double damage to objects and structures because it has that ability. So if you've got your players that have this beloved town, the way to destroy that town and really get a big end of the campaign fight for your players, the Ogremok is where it's at.
Just send a mountain at it.
He's so large, so he's not going to sneak up on you.
No.
He's just going to keep coming at this town that maybe by level 20 or by around level 20, your characters probably run this town.
Sure.
And so just
could you imagine if just all of a sudden it looked like Mount Rainier was closer?
That would be terrifying.
Right?
And it would also...
That's what we're talking about here.
But it would confirm my favorite dumb conspiracy theory that is definitely false, but it's really funny to think about, which is that,
What's that?
Mount Rainier is a hologram. That's why you can see it on some days, and on other days you can't. Damn, a perfect time to freeze, too.
Is beyond special. I blue screened on that. As a person.
Well, also the my internet connection to you froze.
Yeah, and I didn't say anything during that time. I was just so stupefied by that.
Yeah, a good friend of mine told me that while we were doing a show together, and that is it is the funniest thing that I think ever heard in my life as someone that's spent his entire life in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah.
Just
Now,
Mount Rainier's hologram.
Before we depart this stream, are you okay if I add in one honorable mention?
Absolutely. Do it.
I'm going to go all the way up to a challenge rating 25 on this one.
Ooh,
It
big
is
boy.
it is not a legendary creature. It does not have legendary actions or legendary resistances. But if the retriever wasn't sturdy enough for you, if you're saying, I love that idea, but my players are like level 15 plus, they would just crush this thing so fast, then have no fear and send the Marut after them. The Marut is possibly my favorite monster in the entire game.
So, you can't see my eyes because of these shades, but they are dinner plates.
Yeah. The Marut, armor class of 22,
Mm-hmm.
432 hit points. It has a movement speed, it has a fly speed. And here are my favorite things about it. You can't polymorph it. Spells that change its size and shape don't work.
Nope, they don't.
Spell save for its DC 20. It only knows plane shift because this comes from the City of Doors. It comes from a sigil where contracts are forged. And if you welch on a deal in sigil and they need you there, they send the Marut to come get you. Now, it has magic resistance. It does have legendary resistances. It doesn't have legendary actions, but it has legendary resistances.
Yeah. Which, I mean, by level 25, by CR 25, if you don't have legendary resistances, what are you doing with your life?
Yeah. Now, it's multi-attack. It gets to make 2 attacks, but it doesn't roll for its attacks. Its attacks hit you. It can't fail. Now, it can't crit.
Yep.
And you don't roll for the damage.
It just hits you.
60 points of force damage and get knocked back. Because if you're up in its face, it's just trying to knock you away until it gets to its quarry. And then it has the Blazing Edict, which recharges on a 5 or 6. 60-foot cube, everything takes 45 radiant damage. After you've taken that damage, then you roll a wisdom save to see if you're stunned.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah. And then lastly, Justify. DC 20 charisma save. It can target 2 creatures within 60 feet. If you fail, you are transported straight to Sigil, and the Marut goes with you. And I love this creature for the same reason I love the Retriever. Just, it's the Terminator. It's coming after you. It doesn't care. You can't reason with it. You can't do anything about it. And with things like that unerring slam and the Blazing Edict, you're not going to slow it down. It can do so friggin' much damage. And then when it finally catches up with its quarry, plane shifts away, back in that City of Doors, and it has 2 different ways to get you there. One to stun you with the Blazing Edict and then use the plane shift, and the other one to target you with Justify and bamf you both the hell out of there. So that's my other choice for most terrifying monster, the Marut.
See, and we spent this whole time, we do have 2 minutes left on our regularly scheduled time to talk about, I mean, the granddaddy of all scariest D&D enemies. Yes, he's legendary. Yes, he's got a lair. Yes, he's the baddest big bad, although he's not that high of a CR. We got our man Strahd.
Strahd von Zarovich. And what would Halloween be if we did not mention Strahd? He's a well fleshed out villain. He's well written.
He's so good.
And you can run Curse of Strahd and take some of the more problematic elements out of it. They have just released Revamped, which actually they addressed a lot of those issues.
Oh,
I
haven't read it yet.
One of the biggest things they addressed was because the Vistani are very clearly like medieval, they're fantasy Romany. It's very clearly what they're inspired by. But so much of the Vistani are always drunk, and that's a negative racial stereotype that is often against Romany people. And so they took that out. They changed some of the alignments of some of the characters. They made a few small alterations, but it's such a great adventure. And he's a intelligent villain, and he's a villain that, if run well, by the end of that campaign, your players will hate him, and that battle will be personal.
It's so satisfying when you can make that happen, and it's easy to do with a smart villain.
So yeah,
and it's just
Strahd von Zarovich. We love you. We love to hate you. He's the
big
best.
bad vampire, baby.
Yeah, He's this big bad vampire. He's this whiny emo boy about the girl who didn't like him, who killed his brother. Because I mean, we've all been there.
Right. I mean, the the person you love falls for your sibling instead of you, so you kill your sibling and go on an unending revenge quest to try and get your lost love. I mean, tale as old as time.
I think the other thing I really love about Strahd, really love about him, is he is irredeemable. He is a monster. He is a villain. So there's no amount of this, oh, if we could just reach out to him. No. He is a monster. He is horrible, and he needs to die. And Strahd, we love to hate you, but deep down, as DMs, we love you.
And it's so fun DMing Strahd because you can, like, as many things that they give you in the book about Strahd's personality, there's still so many ways you can take it. Like, you can have Strahd be the classic, dark, broody, but still weirdly sexual vampire.
Yep.
You can also make him that, you know, I've lived forever, so I don't really give a damn cocky. Like, you can make him just dark and evil and terrifying with none of those other things to lighten it up, and it still fits Strahd.
I mean, let's face it, we all love Castlevania.
Absolutely.
It's Castlevania in D&D.
That's like, really how it comes down.
It's Castlevania. It's what it is.
100%. All right. We've just about hit our time.
Yeah.
I hope you've enjoyed watching, everybody. Remember to join us on our Facebook page, on our Instagram.
Please do.
We've just started talks about what we're going to do for some kind of holiday special, so we'll figure that out and we'll let you know. So keep watch.
And please tune into that when it happens, because it'll be fun.
Yep, it will 100% be fun. Some of the little things we've thrown back and forth.
It'll be great.
It's already shaping up to be great. Always remember, we're in the current times, so take care of yourselves. Be good to yourselves. Be good to each other.
And if you haven't voted, make sure you either drop it off at an official ballot box, or this time, don't mail it back.
Yep.
Turn it in person. It's important. My ballot has been received. I got that confirmation today. So friggin' vote.
Yep. Everything's trying to jank with this election. So make sure that when your voice is heard, your voice actually gets heard.
Yes.
It's important. There's nothing else really to say on it, but it's important. Freaking do it.
Yep. And if you're a DM, always remember, find every situation you can to make sure you get to roll with advantage. Your players will hate it.
That's very true. Good God. Yep. Why would you give them that?
Because I'm a DM, baby.
All right. Catch us next week. Same bat time, same bat channel.
That's right.
Peace.
Night, y'all.